So thank you for tuning into Chompin at the Bit. This is episode 64. I am Kyle Edwards, of course. This episode, we're going to take a look at the NBA season as it is now 1 week in. So I want to do some observations from the opening week. Take a look at some teams who are maybe sitting at the bottom of these conferences that are expected to finish at the top. See maybe what's wrong, see maybe which fan bases might be in trouble. Then to take a look at the other end of some surprising teams who have gotten out to a really good start and see maybe which ones could, keep it going and maybe ride it out to a playoff spot. And maybe some that may fall back into the pack and, ultimately fall back into maybe the play-in range or maybe completely out. Going to take a look at the quirk in the NBA schedule for this year. Give you my quick opinion on that. Plus some other observations, of course. But then also look at the major awards that they hand out every year. And I think after watching a week's worth of games, I have pretty much seen every team play at least once. And from doing that, I think I can pinpoint which guys might be in the running for all of the major awards. And so, like I said, that's like Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, Defense Player of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year, Most Improved Player, MVP. Those are the big ones I'll be looking at. There's other awards like Executive of the Year, but I'm not really worried about that right now. So... but yeah, and then by the end of the episode, of course, take a look at the next episode, let you know what's to come. So, I guess we'll start off talking about the observations. So, if you've been watching the games like myself, you've probably seen what the first observation you've probably seen is defense is kind of an afterthought right now. Now, for most teams, I probably wouldn't be alarmed by that because it's been a short off season, no training camp or anything. So a lot of players, I think, are just kind of slowly getting back into the swing of things of, competitive basketball and all that. So you'll see a lot of rotations defensively be a little slower. Some guys might be a step off in terms of closing out on shooters. And because of that, you were seeing some really high-scoring games early in the season. You're seeing teams scoring 140s and 130s and 120s. You're usually seeing a score like that every night. I do think as we move closer to the probably like end of January, I think players will finally be fully invested in this season, and you'll probably start seeing scoring come back down a little bit. I think they said like scoring so far is on probably the highest. I think the highest pace has been in a while. So I wouldn't freak out yet about defenses of your favorite team or anything like that. I think it's something that will be fixed as the season goes on. So that's probably the first observation that I've seen and probably a lot of you have seen. Second one is the schedule. I gotta say, I kind of like how this schedule is where, I'll take my Celtics as an example. So they just finished playing basically a 2-game series against the Pacers where they played, they had an off day, then they played the Pacers, had another off day, and then played the Pacers again in Indiana. So they did 2 games, 4 nights, same city. And then after that, they just play like Memphis tonight on a back-to-back. Then they have a night off, and then they go out to Detroit and do the same thing in Detroit, where they'll play a game, have an off day, play Detroit again, then move on to the next city. And I think that's a good thing that the NBA should look at using going forward in their schedule, because it will definitely create better travel situations, because I think a lot of players will get worn down if you're doing those road trips where it's like 4 games in 5-6 nights, where you're bouncing to 4 different cities for 4 nights, and players are basically playing a game, boarding a late plane, flying in, getting a little bit of rest, preparing next game, and stuff like that. If you're in the same city, it's no travel arrangements. You play your game, you go to a hotel room, you chill, you do your normal stuff. You have the day off, then you can, do your normal preparations, play the next game, then you go to another city. And I do think in terms of like rivalry type games, well, mainly division games, I think that back-to-back in the same city probably will intensify certain matchups. Like, think of it, late season, you have like Boston, Philly doing a double like that. Both teams tight race for the division lead and playoff positioning. Think of the intensity you could get. Or you get like a Laker Clipper type thing late in the year on a back-to-back like that. So I think the NBA should definitely keep the scheduling quirk going forward, just to create that, I don't know if it's like emotion, but I do think it'll keep players fresher on road trips. So I do like that. That's one good thing that's come out of scheduling because of the pandemic and everything. So I think they really hit on something there. Something else I've noticed is, speaking of Philly, I feel like it's even more this year than most, that Philly is basically going to go wherever Embiid takes them. Because, I guess so far, Embiid hasn't really gone up against another center who's, I guess, on his level. And, well, mainly, body type wise, because Embiid is a big guy. But, he's been the most dominant guy for Philly. And then when he's not on the court, it does look like it's a noticeable difference when Embiid's not on the court. And then now, because of that, I'm starting to think, maybe the whole James Harden to Philly talk, I could see that resurfacing a little later, only because with Daryl Morey in Philly, if Ben Simmons doesn't, come along as probably Morey feels like, where, Simmons becomes more of a assertive offensive player to take the load off of Embiid. We all know Embiid's injury history, so you don't want to put too much of a load on him for a full season. You want somebody who can take some of the scoring load off of him. And the other night they got something from Tobias Harris, but he's another guy who you get kind of a good game every couple of weeks with him. They really want Simmons to, step up and be that guy. But until Simmons shows that he's going to willingly, shoot mid-range shots, outside shots and all that, floor spacing is still going to be a major issue for Philly. And I do think that's going to be the one thing that would hold Philly back from really having any playoff success, because they haven't really had it yet. Well, I can't say that because they had the one year where, Kawhi Leonard beat them on that miracle 3 in the corner, the bounce on the rim 4 times. But since then, Philly's just kind of seems like they're getting progressively worse. And so I do think that's a situation to look at, because with the shortened schedule and the short layoff in the offseason, I do think this kind of another observation I've seen is that the standings by the end of the season could look a little funky, only because you just don't know what's going to happen with the shortened season. Like I said, so one of the teams that, coming into the year may have been seen as a bad team, but if they get on a hot streak, because of the way these games are situated, if you're hot for like 2 weeks or so, you could find yourself making a large leap in the standings. Same way the other way, if you slump for a week or two, you can see yourself falling to the back of the pack, and you can't really afford that. Depending on your team, we know with Philly, they've had their issues on the road with no fans right now. I don't know if that's as big of an issue for them, but it is something that they're going to be thinking about. So I do wonder if by, All-Star break or so, if Morey will be willing to deal for Harden, since he already knows what Harden's about. And then, of course, if you're Houston, you're going to want, Ben Simmons and some other pieces thrown in. So that's something to look forward going on the rest of this first half of the season. Another observation I made is that the Raptors, I feel like they could be in some serious trouble. We know that in the offseason they lost Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka. They didn't really address losing them. I guess they went into it thinking that, what's his name, Boucher, the young big man, would kind of fill in and make up for some of the loss. Which, he does, because he's more of a perimeter player, and he's not as physically big as a Gasol or an Ibaka, and I feel like that's one thing that is starting to show with Toronto. Another thing is Siakam still hasn't bounced back from his bubble performance. He's come out and struggled early on in the season. I know they gave their money to Fred VanVleet, but it kind of seems like they're trying to make VanVleet something that he isn't, where they want him to be that playmaking, alpha dog on the team, and I don't think that's what he is. One, he's a smaller guard, so I think it's harder for him to do that. And then they kind of want him to, I guess, take over for Kyle Lowry, which I understand because Lowry's getting up there as he's 30. He's like 36 or something. So they want VanVleet to be that guy when Lowry kind of moves out. But VanVleet doesn't have the same personality as Lowry, whereas Lowry is a, like a junkyard dog type of guy, get dirty, be a little chippy when he has to be. VanVleet isn't really like that, so I think in order for Toronto to turn it around, they're going to have to, I guess, kind of change the way that they operate. One's going to have to be fixing the low post, because they have Aaron Baines as well. I forgot about him. But so far, Baines is kind of struggling. So, it's going to be kind of a big issue for them going forward, because in the East, you're looking at having to deal with Embiid down low, Greek Freak down low. Let me see who else is there. There's another. Celtics, you have Tristan Thompson, but he's another guy who, hangs around the rim, so you got to deal with that. Let me see what other. Well, and then when you get out west, you have like Anthony Davis, LeBron, just like a Whiteside, Karl Anthony Towns, guys like that who are bigger, athletic big men who, play around the rim and make plays on the boards, both offensively and defensively. And right now, it seems like that's going to be the way to really attack Toronto. Because, Lowry still plays good perimeter defense, but like I said, down low, you can kill them. So, and for a team in Toronto that's supposed to be in the mix with, the East being kind of wide open, most people thinking it's Brooklyn at the top, Milwaukee at the top, and then your, I guess, second tier with your Boston, Indiana, Philly. Supposed to be Toronto's in that group. Well, right now, Toronto looks like a team that I mean, let's face it, isn't even close to a playoff team right now. So, Nick Nurse has his hands full with what to do over there. Another observation, looking at the standings, if you go on ESPN right now, click on the NBA, click on standings, you will see some rarities in the standings right now. And I kind of want to touch on some teams and see if it's sustainable or not with them. So the first team, we'll start with the East. Makes sense. So I don't know if you would know, but the Orlando Magic are currently the best team in the East. Of course, I'm not expecting Orlando to stay up there. And I don't even think that's really the question. It is more of, can Orlando be a playoff team again this year? Past couple of years they've been the 7 and 8 seed, which of course this year would now put you in the play-in tournament. And I think when I did my standings prediction in my preview, I put Orlando in that 7 to 10 range for the play-in game. But they're 4-0 right now. Is it possible that they could play spoiler, make the top 6, and push one of the favorites down into the 7-10 area? I'm going to say no. I don't think they can sustain it. Because, right now they do have some questions on the team because, they're still trying to reclimate. Yeah, I think it's a word. But they still have the project, we'll go with that word, with Markelle Fultz. They have Cole Anthony, the young guy, in the backcourt as well. So the backcourt is either unproven or young between those two guys. And we'll have to see if they can keep their play going to help Orlando stay where they are. You have Aaron Gordon, who there's a lot of talk of, will Orlando move him or not? So, of course, if they keep playing at this level, he'll definitely stay there. But if there is even a little bit of slip, will that start lingering over the team? And then who knows what happens there. But yeah, so Orlando's a team I expect to fall back to the pack at some point. We have the Pacers up there. I think the Pacers have shown that they are a team that's going to be involved as long as their guys stay healthy. Oladipo, Sabonis, Brogdon, because Brogdon's had some injury issues, so has Oladipo. If those two guys can stay healthy, and if TJ Warren can continue his bubble TJ Warren magic, then the Pacers will be a team to be reckoned with. The Cavaliers at 3-1. I really don't expect them to stay up there because they are a young team on the come up, but that's more of, getting Sexton ready for the prime time, as well as, how much do they get from Kevin Love as he's getting up there? Is Kevin Love another guy that they move for pieces and really try to get the rebuild going? You have the Hawks, who just had their first loss against Brooklyn tonight in a game that was highly contested. The Hawks are a team that I do think can kind of stay in the mix before maybe falling into the 7 to 10 range. I do like the additions of Gallinari, and I was going to say Capella. He was there last year, but he was hurt. So I do like the addition of him actually on the court. It seems like Hunter has taken a little step in his game. He's become a reliable corner 3 guy, and on the break he can fill the lane and get you baskets around the rim. Reddish is still the guy I wonder about. What exactly type of player is he? You have John Collins, who at least early on is a kind of a double-double machine. So with that front court rotation with Collins, Gallinari, you got, I just said his name, Capella, the three of them working together, they're a formidable bunch. And of course, you have Trae Young, who seems like he's been more of a, well, he's definitely gotten better in a playmaking role. He is the leading scorer on the team still, but I do think for that team, that's what he needs to be. Although, I think proportion-wise, I feel like he's scoring like 15 points more a game than the next guy. I don't really want to see the scoring split that way, because all that will do is lead to teams keying in on him. Okay, so he's scoring 20 points a game more than the next guy. He scores 34 a game. Collins is scoring 14 a game. That's the number 2 guy. So I'm expecting Trae Young's numbers to come down a bit, because it'd be crazy for him to score 34 a game for the whole year. But just because like 34 becomes 20, like 25, 26, and he's up around 7-8 assists, I think that's a good spot for him to be in. So if he can keep that, and then you get a little more, not necessarily Collins, because Collins is at like 14, 15 a game with 10, 11 rebounds. That's perfect for him. And if you can get double figures out of Gallinari and Bogdanovic and Capella, then I think they're a team that can be definitely in the playoff mix by the end of the year. And then, I mean, just looking at some other teams, you know, you have the Celtics with Philly. Well, Philly's, you know, up there in that mix of the 4 and 5. They're fine. Brooklyn, probably surprisingly, is only 3 and 2 to start the year, but you can see what they have going there between Durant and Kyrie. You know, those two are definitely the top duo for them. Now, the Dinwiddie injury, I do want to see how that plays out for the rest of the year, as he tore his ACL, and he was going to be a key contributor coming off the bench, and especially given like Kyrie some time on the bench, Dinwiddie's a guy who could come in and give you the same type of production offensively. With him now out of the picture, that puts more on Karis LeVert coming off that bench to score more. And plus, it probably means that you can't go minutes where both Durant and Kyrie were sitting together. They're probably going to have to keep one of them on the court with LeVert and those guys in order to be effective. So we'll have to see later in the year, does that maybe run the tank a little low on Durant as he's, you know, just coming back from the injury? That's something to watch there. But yeah, then at the bottom of the East, you have the Raptors, who I just talked about. They have some roster issues there that they have to figure out. But Washington is a team that I do want to talk about, because the Wizards are 0-4. Right now, they're the absolute last team in the East. That is a big surprise to me, because I thought with Westbrook coming over with Beal, and, you know, I thought Westbrook and Beal were a better fit than John Wall and Bradley Beal, that I'm really surprised that they started off 0-4. And Westbrook, I believe, has had a triple-double in 3 of the 4 games, so he's kind of getting back to his MVP level play. But kind of their main problem is, which has been a problem for the past couple of years, defensively, they just aren't good. And bringing in Westbrook doesn't really fix that issue either, because Westbrook isn't he's not a defensive stopper. You know, he'll get you rebounds, he'll get you some steals here or there, but I mean, he's not a guy that you fear defensively that, you know, takes away one of your scoring options. That's not what he does. So I don't know if this is something where they probably just need some more time together, because, you know, Beal is scoring 32 a game, Westbrook's up around 20 a game, and like I said, He's averaging a triple-double at 19 points, like 14 rebounds, 13 assists. Don't know if he can keep that up all year. He's done it before, but I don't know at this stage of his career if he can or not. It'd be a bonus if he did. But yeah, I definitely expect them to have had a better start than they've had so far between Beal, Westbrook. Bryant is a serviceable big man. You had Bertans, the guy who they just re-signed in the offseason to make sure he didn't go to other teams in the East because he was a guy who gives them production off their bench. They have the young guy of Dia, who, you can't really expect too much out of him early on in the season, but this will be good for him to kind of get him accustomed to the game, as he's a guy coming from overseas to the NBA. A little bit of, needing to get used to the speed of the NBA and kind of the way of NBA plays versus overseas. So I think he'll be fine. Ultimately, I don't expect Washington to be at the bottom of the East, but they can't go too much longer, winless or really struggling here, because then they'll fall too far behind to really be able to dig themselves out of the hole and get back into the playoffs. So, I guess those are my observations for the East. West standings. I feel like the West standings seem a little more standard right now. But, you got the Clippers at the top, Lakers there, Jazz, Blazers. The Suns and the Kings right now are the 2 and 3 in the West. The Suns, I think most people thought once you brought in Chris Paul, Phoenix was going to take that step after going 8-0 with the bubble run. They just didn't qualify for the playoffs. But that 8-0 run kind of showed that with adding a guy like CP3, that they were probably going to be a playoff team this year. So I'm not really that surprised by that. The Kings, on the other hand, I think I had the Kings probably in the play-in tournament, only because I see what they're... I can see the talent on the team. You have De'Aaron Fox, who is one of those guys I really do like in the NBA. You have Buddy Hield as your sharpshooter. You have Harrison Barnes, who, if they can get some more consistency out of Harrison Barnes, they'll be even better off for it. Down low, you have Rashawn Holmes, who's an athletic big who can run the floor, finish at the rim. So he works with this group. You have the young guy, Halliburton, who, can spell Fox for a few minutes. He's a good outside shooter. Was a decent outside shooter. He can get to the rim. So they have some talent there. I don't know in the West whether they can stay within the playoff picture, but I do think they're a team, like I said, should be within the play-in tournament, because I'm just looking at the teams who you think are probably out of it. Memphis, now that John Morant's hurt. The Thunder, who we all know who are rebuilding because they've gathered a bunch of draft picks, so they expect to slowly, build back up next few years here. Spurs, you're not sure what they could be. But outside of that, you could take all of those teams. If you told me like 30 different ways they would finish, I probably would believe you. Of course, you'd expect like the Lakers and Clippers to be at the top. But after that, you could put them in any order you wanted to, and I wouldn't be mad at it. The Rockets are the only winless team in the West, but they haven't had their full complement of players yet. Was it Wall, Cousins, and was it Wood are on like the COVID list, so they aren't eligible to come back until I believe it's next Monday. So once all of those players are there, then you can really assess the Rockets. Right now, it's kind of Harden in a bunch of pieces, so I'm not going to really spend too much time on them. But the Nuggets have gone off to a slow start, but Murray didn't play the last game, so I'm not really worried about them. I know by the end of the year, they'll be right back where they were last year in the mix. So, yeah, I'm not too worried about them. Not too really worried about Dallas either. Dallas will be fine by the end of the year. Golden State is a team I do want to talk about. They are 2-2 right now. Golden State's an interesting team to me because Curry looks fine after missing most of the year a lot of time last year. He's come back. He's getting better with each game. First couple of games were a little bit of a struggle for him finding his shooting touch. Then the last couple, he's been finding his range. So I'm not worried about him. Wiggins. I think the story all year with Wiggins is going to be, can they get him to be aggressive offensively and, not get bullied around defensively. So there are times where, teams are keying in on Curry, doubling him and all that kind of stuff, where if you're watching them, you just want Wiggins to just not necessarily take over, but do something. And a lot of times you'll see him kind of drifting on the perimeter, forcing up like ill-advised deep twos and all that kind of stuff. But then for little stretches, you'll see him going to the basket, getting around the rim, finishing at the rim, getting to the free throw line. I think Golden State needs to get it into his head that he has to play that way every game all year. And if he does that, they'll be fine. Oubre went through the whole, the first 4 games. He went through basically 3.5 without hitting an outside shot. Then he hit a 3 the last game. So maybe that 3 can get him going because they're definitely going to need him. They haven't had Draymond Green yet. And once Green comes back, hopefully when he comes back, he's healthy and everything. At least he gives them a second ball handler, playmaker to take pressure off of Curry. So I do think that's going to help them when he gets back. So Golden State's a team where they could finish, like 6th, 7th. Or if Wiggins struggles, Oubre struggles, Green never, looks like his old self, they could finish 11th or 12th. I don't know. Right now, like I said, they're 2-2. They are kind of like 8th or whatever. And ultimately, that is probably where they will probably end up. Because I would expect the Clippers, the Suns, the Jazz, the Lakers, the Blazers. You expect probably Dallas to figure it out and get it in front of them. Denver as well. So that's 7 right there. So yeah, I'm expecting Golden State to be, fighting in that 7, 8, 9, 10 range with like the Pelicans and maybe the Spurs and Rockets. Spurs and like the Kings. I don't know. But Golden State is an interesting team to me. So yeah, that's kind of looking at the surprises. Touched on a couple of disappointing teams with the Raptors and the Wizards. But like I said, it's still early on, so a lot of these teams can change their fortune and, either, do better, move on up, or some of these teams at the top, we're going to move back, fall into the pack. And like I said, with the shortened season of 72 games, I think you're going to see a lot of weird stuff this year. We've seen it so far with scoring way up, defense is looking terrible, Shooting is kind of up and down. One night, teams are shooting the lights out. You'll go watch them the very next night. They can't hit anything. And I think it's going to be a theme for at least the first month or so of the season. So whichever team can take advantage in that first month or so and get a lot of wins under their belt will be fine going forward. Yeah, this is not going to be the year to really fall far behind and expect to make a late run or a push to get up into at least the top 6, which is where you want to be, because you want to kind of stay out of the play-in tournament. But with that, that leads me into the whole season award thing that I was talking about. So from watching these teams and where they are right now, I've kind of gathered, for the major awards, as I said in the beginning, who's kind of in the running for them. So we'll go over that really quickly here to finish out the episode. But first award, Rookie of the Year. We just had the draft. Some of the rookies are getting some play. Some are just waiting for their chance. I do think for a rookie, this season will be a great year for them, because with the way that the schedule is, with the back-to-backs and all that kind of stuff, I feel like a lot of coaches are going to be forced to sit some top players the second night of a back-to-back, and you'll see some of these young guys get some play. But just looking at it, I think the contenders for Rookie of the Year right now, I'm looking at Wiseman in Golden State, and I think that's basically because he's going to be a guy that will just going to have to play, because they drafted him third, of course, so he's going to get every opportunity. He looks like a guy who might be a double-double guy at the end of the year, which will definitely help them. And if Golden State is a playoff team, that will look even better for him. So I think he'll be in the running. I think Edwards in Minnesota, Anthony Edwards, another guy who will be in the running, because once again, he was drafted high and Minnesota's going to play him. I think he's the guy who can average like 13, 14 a game. And like I said, he's going to play a lot this year, so he's going to get a lot of exposure. So I think he's going to be in the running. Let's see, what's Edwards at? Well, Edwards is averaging 15 right now, and I would not be surprised if he stayed in that area. I would like to see him add a little more rebound and assist wise. He's only averaging like 2 rebounds and 2 assists, but usually Rookie of the Year, they kind of look at scoring first. So if he can stay around 15, he'll be fine. And then the third name, I feel like you want me to say LaMelo Ball. I'm not going there. Even though I think LaMelo Ball will probably be in the running only because of all the hype and all that. He'll get you. See, the one thing working for LaMelo Ball is assist-wise, you'll see him on like top 10 plays kind of regularly with like behind the back passes and stuff. And that alone will keep him in the conversation. But I think number-wise, until he fixes his jump shot, well, you know what? I'll put him up there. Because I do think I have a little more faith in him than his brother Lonzo. So I do think by the end of the year, I don't know, because LaMelo's averaging like 6 points a game right now. His numbers are actually worse than I thought. Yeah, 6 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. That's not going to do it. But I do think on that team, if he does fix his jump shot and gets more aggressive getting to the hoop, I think LaMelo can put himself in the Rookie of the Year conversation. So, that's kind of boring with the top 3, but I think those are the 3. And then another name I'm just going to throw in there is Isaac Okoro out of Cleveland. I mean, I'm about to say, of course, they keep the start that they've had going 3-1. Then yeah, but I do think Okoro's a guy who he's going to get plenty of minutes. He plays over 30 a game right now, and he'll get every opportunity on a team in Cleveland with not a lot of expectations. Where you'll see some games where he will put up big numbers. So I'll go with those 4 for Rookie of the Year. Coach of the Year. This one I feel a little bit more confident about, but I'm saying Steve Nash with Brooklyn, of course. If the Nets end up as the number 1 seed in the East, I mean, Steve Nash is going to get a lot of consideration. I'm looking at Monty Williams, the coach down in Phoenix. And like I said, with Chris Paul there, if Phoenix, after, I think it's been like since mid-2000s since they've been in the playoffs. If he, along with CP3 being there, get Phoenix back into the playoffs, of course Monty Williams is going to be up for Coach of the Year. I've got Van Gundy in New Orleans, where if he can get that team of Ingram, Zion, and all that, if he can get them to play better defensively, which is what his calling card is, you figure there's enough offense on that team to get them into a possible playoff situation. If that's the case, Van Gundy will get some talk. And then I got Doc Rivers in Philly. I mean, there's a lot of eyes on Philly. So if Rivers can get Philly to like a top 3 spot in the East, and especially after what he went through with the Clippers last year, then they'll definitely be looking at him. And the last name I'll throw in there is what's his name down in Atlanta? His name was literally just on the tip of my tongue, and I can't remember right now. Hold on, I gotta look this up. What is his name? That's crazy. Like, I can picture him. Hold on a second. Lloyd Pierce. That's his name, Lloyd Pierce. He's another guy, if, because the Hawks have been out of the playoffs past few years. If he can get this somewhat young team into the playoff picture, then he'll get a lot of consideration as well. So those are my Coach of the Year candidates. Yeah, I don't really think there's anybody else to add there. I want to say Brad Stevens in Boston. But I think the other way he would get it is if the Celtics do end up as number 1, then Brad Stevens would. But I do think one of those other guys would probably get more consideration than he does, only because his team is seen as a top team in the East already. Defensive Player of the Year, I think Marcus Smart. He just made all defensive team last year. So naturally, if his defense is up to par as it's been the past few years, and he's played great defensively so far this year. So he's a guy who I think there's enough buzz around him that he will be in the running. Adebayo in Miami. Miami's a defensive team. He is their rim protector. So seems natural there. And he, again, coming off a lot of buzz from the bubble. Rudy Gobert, the newly paid Rudy Gobert. His calling card is defense, so he's definitely going to be in the running. And then AD with the Lakers. He's their rim protector as well. Plus, he does a lot offensively, so I think eyes will be on him again. And plus, I feel like they're not going to want to give it to Giannis. Giannis won MVP twice in a row. He didn't win defense. He won defense player last year. I think Milwaukee defensively is going to take a little bit of a step back this year, so I think that's going to hurt Giannis in that defensive player of the year category. So I do think those 4 will be the ones by the end of the season. 6th man is usually one of the most contested ones because there's always a lot of good bench players. I did have Spencer Dinwiddie in this list, but of course he got hurt, so he can't win it. But I'm looking at Karis LeVert. They were like the bench duo to go with Durant and Kyrie as the starters. So with Dinwiddie gone, LeVert's going to have to score more. So, and with the Nets probably in the running for top 2 seed in the East, he's going to get a lot of attention for that. Harrell, of course, he just won 6th man of the year. Now he's on the Lakers. We all know Lakers always get a lot of eyes on them, so Harrell there. I think Tyler Hero with Miami, only because he's riding off of that buzz from the bubble as well. He played really well, and he was one of the best Miami players in that final series against the Lakers, even though they came up short. But I think Hero is definitely showing the league that he's going to be a problem for years to come. So I think he's in the running there. And then kind of the surprise name, Josh Jackson in Detroit. Now we know that Jackson was in that draft with Tatum. It was a high pick. Got into some trouble in Phoenix. Was moved out. Now that he's in Detroit, he's been getting a lot of minutes so far, and he's kind of made the most of it. He and like Jeremy Grant on their team have made the most of their opportunity, and if he can keep this play up, and if Detroit can be a contending team, and it's been a lot of years where Detroit's been supposed to be the surprise team in the East, and it hasn't happened. If this is the year that Detroit can make a little bit of playoff run, then I think Jackson's got to be a major part of that. So I think he can be in the 6th man of the year award. I also put in Jackson in for most improved player. Don't have to say it again. He, like I said, ran into trouble in Phoenix. Looked like he could have been on his way out, but it definitely seems like he's found some like new found reasoning for his playing career. And if he can stay out of trouble in Detroit, then I think most improved player, he's definitely in the running for that. I'm going with Gary Trent in Portland. Same thing. Going into the bubble last year, he was just the guy. But then in the bubble, he was like the bench guy for them. I should probably put Gary Trent in with 6th man of the year as well. But just to start off this year, like Gary Trent has become an important scorer for Portland. He's become a pretty deadly 3-point shooter for them. And we know that they like to run a lot of guards out there with Dame, CJ, now Trent. So he's definitely going to get a lot of minutes to really show his talent. And there will be some games this year where you'll see that Trent will probably be the leading scorer on that team because he has that ability. So that's what I'm saying for most improved player. I got Gilgeous-Alexander in Oklahoma City. Now with no CP3, no Gallinari, no Steven Adams. It all falls on his shoulders right now. And, he's put up some good numbers so far this year. So if he can keep going with that all year, he's going to kind of take that leap. Was going to have to take that leap from, like second, third guy in the team. On this team, he has to be the number one guy. And if he can put up big numbers, then that's what I got him for most improved player, at least in the running. Zion, of course, he's supposedly not on a minutes restriction this year. So, that's going to be a reason to be most improved if he gets through the whole year. And if he does, you know what you're going to get from him. He's going to be probably like a 18 to 22 point per game guy, 9 to 12 rebounds. He's going to give you some highlight plays and all that. And if New Orleans can be in the playoff race, of course, he's going to be the guy that they're going to be looking at. So that's why. And then I got Michael Porter Jr. Same thing. He showed something late in the bubble. He showed a little something in the playoffs. And with Murray out right now, he's a guy. Well, even when Jamal Murray comes back, he's not supposed to be out that long. But on this Nuggets team, the playmaking duty is going to have to fall on Murray, Jokic, as always. And I think they're going to look for Porter Jr. to have a bigger role in this team. He does have to get better defensively. That would be the only thing that would keep him from being in the mix here, because if he doesn't perform defensively, then you could see, his minutes probably getting cut back a little bit, because with some of these teams in the West on the wing, you have to be defensive minded, because if not, you're going to get killed by some of these wing players. And on a Denver team that, Jokic is the rim protector, but he isn't the most athletic guy. You don't want to have guys just running in off the wing, diving to the hoop at Jokic, because unfortunately he's not going to turn that many shots away. But I do think, because from what I've seen so far, Porter definitely looks more comfortable offensively. Now, some games his shot just isn't falling, but when his shot is on, he has probably one of the purest forms in the game, and at least for a young player. And he's a guy who's had a lot of hype in his career. He coming out of high school was like a top player in the country. He went to college. He only played a few games, the whole back issue and stuff. So there's already some buzz behind him. And if he has a good year, I do think the writers will want to give him some award. So most improved is probably the most likely. But for the biggest award, of course, the MVP, I put a few more names down here because I just think the field this year is going to be wide open. So I'm looking at Durant. We all know why, if he leads the Nets to the best record in the East, then of course he's going to be talked about for MVP. You got Anthony Davis. I feel like it's only a matter of time before he probably wins an MVP while he's in LA. You got Luka. Luka's a rising star in the league, and he's definitely going to be a future MVP as long as he stays healthy and all that. So he'll probably be in the mix every year. Yeah, LeBron, was he 30? How old was he? 36, 37 or something? But yeah, if he has another good year, where he's, 20, mid-20s a game, like 10 assists and like 8 rebounds or something. You put those numbers plus his age, plus the short off season, all that, then yeah, he's going to be up there again. You got Giannis, Milwaukee. Milwaukee's supposed to be a top team in the East as well. The fact that he's already won back-to-back probably means he won't be in the running, but you never know. I got Dame with Portland. If Portland has the year this year that some people think that they will have, is definitely going to fall on Dame. And I think this is the year where he could, get that MVP that most people think he probably should get at some point in his career. I got Embiid in Philly for what I said before. Philly, they rely so much on Embiid, and if Philly ends up as a top 3 team in the East, then Embiid really can probably make a case for the MVP. Those are the names I have right now. There's some other guys I could throw in there. I mean, I could throw Jason Tatum from Boston. He's a guy who is an up-and-coming star. So if he can take that next step, lead Boston to a top seed in the East, then he'll definitely be involved in the talks as well. Probably somebody in Phoenix. Booker, CP3, one of them. So I do think the MVP race is going to be wide open this year. So that might be the most exciting race to watch this year, as there's so many names I didn't even mention who you could see up there. Maybe a Trae Young in Atlanta. He's a guy who's a popular guy in the league. And if Atlanta can make a surprise run to the top, he's definitely another one. You got Durant's running mate, Kyrie. So, like I said, plenty of names out there. A lot of these awards I think are going to be wide open. Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, I think those will kind of be, Defensive Player. Those will probably be tighter races with a smaller group. But six-man Most Improved and MVP, I think are going to be, you could probably name a bunch of guys there and I wouldn't be mad at you. So, but yeah, I gave you my names there. Of course, end of the year, we'll revisit this to see if I was close on any of them, if I was way off and completely missed a guy. But yeah, so that's kind of my look at the season from the first week. I will continue to do some NBA talk as well as to keep going forward. If any major trades happen and all that, if some teams, I guess, completely implode, definitely talk about that. One last thing before I do get out of here, I do want to say shout out to Becky Hammon down in San Antonio. She became the first woman NBA history to be a head coach in a regular season game. She did that tonight when Popovich got thrown out. And I mean, she's like Popovich's right hand coach, so she naturally filled in for him. And with Popovich, you never know. It could have been one of those things where, he just didn't feel like doing it, so he got himself thrown out, and Becky Hammon took over. But yeah, so shout out to her. I do think, just another quick note, I think if you're going to get a women's coach to coach in the NBA today, I feel like she's the one who will probably do it first. There's a good chance she may even do it in San Antonio whenever Popovich decides to retire or whatever. I do think that's what he's grooming her for, but we'll have to see. But yeah, she took that first step today, coaching the team. I mean, they lost to the Lakers, but that's besides the point. So shout out to you, Becky Hammon. But yeah, so that's my look at the NBA after 1 week. And yeah, before I get out of here, you have to join me for the next episode, because with New Year's right around the corner, that means the college football playoff is about to get started. But I do have a lot to say about the playoff before they get started. I think the 4-team thing has been played out. It's not even interesting anymore. Like, the first year was great, but now we basically know who's in it by the end of the year. So I think the NCAA needs to fix it, and I'm gonna give you what ways I would fix college football going forward. So that's gonna be the next episode. Definitely tune in for that one. Be another good one. But thank you for tuning in. If you're new here, hope you liked it. If you didn't, that's fine. You go check back some other episodes. Maybe you like one of those. But yeah, so thanks for tuning in. As I always say, you can follow the podcast on Facebook on the Chompin at the Bit page. You can go there, follow. If you want to interact, you can do it there, or head on over to Twitter at Chompin Podcast, and it's capital C on Chompin, and then capital P on podcast. One word, all that. Follow the show there as well. I do put up polls and all that kind of stuff on Twitter from time to time. Definitely another way for you to interact with the show. But wherever you are listening to this, hit the subscribe if you would. Appreciate it. There's a place to leave a review. Definitely do that as well. And would help out a lot. So be safe out there. God bless as well. And catch you next episode. All right.